All right, so I've had a lot of people asking about the boots I was wearing on the Iditarod this year, so I just wanted to take a second to kind of go over what they are and where they came from and all that good stuff. These boots I've been kind of brainstorming for some time. A simple, super lightweight boot that's part of a system that handles moisture, because I don't really get a chance to dry my gear. This year I went from Nolado to White Mountain without really stopping at a checkpoint long enough to stop and dry out your boots and everything. So I made these boots in the last week or two before the Iditarod. In fact, they look different because this is prototype number 3 and this is prototype number 4, and I didn't have time to make a second prototype number 4, so I have one of each. I guess that's a good way to test the differences of them, but these suckers went the whole way with me. I started out with some Lobans on, kind of thinking that I'll let them get wet and soak up sweat, and then at least I'll have nice, super lightweight, dry boots to put on day 2. But they went the whole way and actually held up, which kind of surprised me, and it was really good because I didn't have another option. Anyway, so that's what it looks like on the outside. They're super light. I don't remember right off what the weight is on them. The idea with this strap is that it actually helps pinch your heel a little bit. It stays seated on your foot better. I had these guys and just these guys on at 47 below zero and stayed nice and toasty warm. Granted, I was running up the hills. And then over the top of this, the next part is actually like a thicker, almost sleeping bag for your foot. So when it does get super cold and you're more sedentary, you can just slide that on over the top of this, even while you're mushing down the trail. But let's take a look at the innards real quick. So we're gonna start with the actual shell, which is almost nothing. It's a super lightweight. It's actually a material they use for sails. Why did I pick this material? Because this is what I had. Nothing more technical than that. I had previously done a big project making like a tent covering for a building, and I had some leftover material. I'm like, it's breathable. It's water resistant. It beads water and it runs off really well, but it also breathes super well. It's a very tough material. In fact, here on this one, you can see where I gouged it with my brake claw. That happened on the second day of the race, and I thought, I was afraid that it might start to spread and tear, but it did the whole rest of the race without really advancing. I never stitched it up. I never put any glue on it. I intended to at several points along the race, but never took the time to do it. So now the next layer is actually going to be this dry towel, which we sewed into a bootie. And this is just a cotton towel. It's actually a beach towel with crabs on it. So the idea with this is where the moisture is going to end up. And this layer is kind of disposable. Just like you're gonna change your socks, I'm wearing smart wool socks on my feet. Just like I'm gonna change these intermittently, I'm gonna change these out pretty much every checkpoint, and it's something we can send out along the way. Inside of this little booty, I have my mesh insole. And so this is just a plastic mesh so water can pass through it. And what this is gonna do is it's gonna keep my felt liner up away from this towel. So this goes inside of here, like so. And then the felt liner is gonna go right inside of that. And these are supposed to be a little bit snug so that it helps hold everything in place and you don't have that mesh insole sliding around underneath your foot. So it does take a second to work it on here, but I wanted it to be snug enough that it held everything tightly. There we go. So that goes on like that. So now as you're going along, my feet sweat a lot. That moisture is gonna pass through this felt liner into this cotton and be trapped there. So when I stop and rip this wet one off, I'm pulling out all the moisture in one go. Instead of taking an hour or 2 hours to dry your boots, if you can find a place to dry them in a checkpoint, alongside the trail, I can peel this off, put a new one on, and away we go. If it happens to be so cold that the water is actually freezing inside the felt, it's not warm enough, as that moisture leaves your foot, it's going to pass through layers. As it passes through layers, it's going to get colder and colder. And if it's really cold, the freezing point on this boot may well be inside the felt liner. And so my foot is basically in a sock sitting in 30-degree temperature. But with this, if it's super cold out, when I put my over boots on, that frost point just moved farther out, and that allows the moisture to then advance to this towel, but not get into my over boot, and that stays nice and dry. So then this slides into these guys right here. Sometimes I have to loosen these laces up a little bit, but that seems about right. That pops in, and now we have just the basic constructed boot. Pretty lightweight, not a whole lot to it. Let's switch back to this one because prototype 4 is prettier. I did some stuff with the reinforcing here. I'm going to do a more aggressive tread on the boot itself. This is just what I was able to get on super short notice. I was very surprised and relieved that my stitching and the glue that I used to adhere the sole to the boot actually held up. Now inside of this, I'm gonna wear, I guess I'm working my way in now. This, it's a Norwegian sock basically, and it's knitted and then lightly felted, so it's very pliable, but yet it's way thicker than a normal sock is, and I can actually layer these up. Inside of that, I'm gonna wear my smart wool sock, and so this sock right here, we're gonna go ahead and just slide this in. You know what? I'll put it on my foot. Why not? So what I have for actual insulation is a thick sock like this, and sometimes I'll wear a liner sock underneath it. It does help to keep your foot a little bit drier and help prevent trench foot basically. So we're gonna have this sock here, and then this over sock, and that right there is a lot of insulation. I mean, those 2 layers of wool are gonna keep you warm down to a pretty low temperature, and then you add that next layer. Wrong foot. I'm still pretty sleep deprived if you can't tell. That one goes on there. And then when you lace this sucker up, you want to get these back ones pretty tight, and that's going to pinch this up onto your foot. And I was able to run and pedal and ski pole with these things on, and they didn't flop around on my feet. They were super light, and that's so nice when you're tired trying to move quickly in a checkpoint to have a lightweight boot. And you can just do a lot more and do it a lot quicker. Eventually, I think I'm gonna put one of those slide toggles on here to make the lacing process a little bit quicker on them. And that's the kind of the finished product. Like I said, the next layer over the top is that really big puffy boot. Right now I'm using a Wiggy's boot. They're a Wiggy's over boot, and it works well. It's a little heavier than I'd like, and I think it's a little stouter than I need. So I'm now over the summer months, when I have some time, I'm gonna refine these guys and kind of develop that next over layer. That's just gonna be very puffy, kind of a little cloud on my foot that is hopefully very compactable. And I don't want to be too redundant on the sole. I already have a sole. I'm gonna beef this one up a little bit so that next layer over the top is gonna have a pretty thin sole, or possibly even just an open bottom with a lot of insulation on the top. But that's what I wore pretty much the whole way. They worked amazingly well. I'm so glad they held up, especially since they didn't have time to get tested as I might have liked, leading up to the race, being so busy, getting ready for the race, trying to work on these things, and then more importantly, building a sled that I got all of 3 miles of test mushing on that sled before I sent it out to McGrath, switched onto that sled, and then once I was on that sled, I was committed. So fingers crossed it held up the rest of the way. So that's the boot, just wanted to show you.